everybody, and welcome to Tween Tuesday. I'm Miss Cindy from the South Brunswick Public Library. Today's Tween Tuesday is more of a craft that we're going to do. You might have done it if you have come to the library before, because I have done it a couple of times on Tween Tuesday. It's called salt painting. There's probably a lot of ways that you can imagine that going. But basically the way that it was going to go is we are going to put down glue on paper and sprinkle it with salt. Once that salt and that glue have kind of dried together into like a hard clump, we are going to use watercolors, food coloring, paint, whatever, to color in the salt. Now, because salt is absorbent, you're going to be able to drop just a little bit of paint and have the salt kind of disperse it throughout your drawing or your painting or whatever. And I'll go into the details a little bit more as you see it. But basically, you can draw like really beautiful and delicate designs and kind of end up with a sort of tie-dye or ombre effect once you start using the water or the paint, whatever you're using to color it in. It comes out really cool, and it's actually a pretty fun activity. It's a little bit similar to Zen doodling in that, you just want to make kind of designs and it will really bring it to life. So if you want to see what I'm talking about, let's go. Let's get going on our salt painting. First, let me show you what you're going to need. You're going to need thick paper. It doesn't need to be cardstock, but I am using cardstock. Regular white glue, food coloring or watercolor paint, and salt. So first, let's move these out of the way. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is decide on a design that you're going to do on your paper. This is, as you can see, thick cardstock paper. You want it to be a little bit thicker because the glue is going to sit on it and get it kind of wet. So you don't want it to become too heavy. It doesn't need to be cardstock. If you want to use construction paper, that's fine too, just as long as it's a little bit thicker than regular printer paper. So, first thing you're going to do is work on the design. I'm going to do something really simple, and I'm going to be doing mine in gray Sharpie. I'm doing it in Sharpie so that you guys can really see what I'm doing, but if you want to do it in just kind of a light pencil drawing so that you can cover it up with the glue, and you'll see what I mean by that, then that might be a better idea. This is really just so that you guys can follow along. So I'm going to just turn my paper here. And I'm just going to go with a very simple design. It's just my name. Okay, keep that simple. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our regular Elmer's glue. Well, it doesn't have to be Elmer's, it just needs to be white glue. And let me shake this out a little bit. Go over the design. Now, don't forget that whatever you design can't be too small or too intricate because the glue will spread a little bit, will make all your thin lines thicker. So keep that in mind. But we're going to just cover the Sharpie in kind of a straight-ish line. And it doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over a little bit these lines that didn't end up getting fully covered. Because why not? Now it's time to take your salt. And the reason I'm doing this over a paper towel is because the salt will go everywhere. And salt is easy to clean up, but it is a pain. Like nothing's going to happen if you get salt somewhere and you have to dust it up. It's not like glitter, but it is going to be a pain to clean up. So it's always better to do a little bit of prevention ahead of time. So we just Sprinkle the salt over the glue, making sure it's fully covered. Make sure to ask permission before you use the salt. Don't just take like the good salt from the kitchen or something. Always make sure to ask. I'm covering up any bits that look shiny because that means that they're wet and I don't want them to be too wet. Now that it is covered, I'm going to let it sit for about a minute or so just to make sure that the glue and the salt really adhere together. And then we're going to dump out the salt. So let's just give it a minute. Okay, it's been sitting for about a minute. So we're going to take the paper and just slightly fold it. Don't fold it too intensely. And if you have like a trash can nearby, that's probably a better spot to do this. But I'm just going to do this over my paper towel. Just turn it, give it a little bit of a shake. Not too intensely, you don't want to lose chunks of your artwork. But you do want to make sure you lose the kind of loose particles of salt. Okay. Now, don't try to put the salt back in the container. I know there is a lot of salt there that hasn't touched glue, but there is also lots of salt there that did touch glue, so you want to make sure that doesn't go back into something that people will be eating. Okay, it's white on white, but you can still see the salt artwork underneath. If I touched it, it would feel kind of solid. Now, at this point, you can either let it dry for like a really long time until it becomes hard, or you can start adding the colors now. Either way is fine, so I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to take my food coloring here, and I'm using the liquid food coloring that comes out in droppers. Now, the important thing about this is whether you use food coloring or watercolor paint or even regular paint mixed with some water, you want it to be very liquidy, so you don't want it to be goopy. You want it to be very, very liquidy. And if you're going to be using watercolor or anything like that, I suggest you use a paintbrush for this. Now, you're not going to want to use a paintbrush to actually paint over it. You're going to want to dip your paintbrush into the water and then slowly into the colored water, and then slowly let it drip over. Now you'll see what I mean, because if you get it too wet, then you're going to lose all the artwork. So here, let's start with some blue. Now you're going to carefully drip. And you see the color is going to start to spread. It's going to spread a lot further than just where the little drop was in the center. So you don't want to add too much because the salt will start to dissolve and you'll start losing your art. So let's do some chunks of blue. All right, I am pretty much done. So now this I'm going to let dry for at least an hour, but I would suggest leaving it to dry like overnight, just to make sure it's fully dry if you're going to put it up anywhere, because you don't want any salt chunks falling off or anything. So you want it to be fully dry and hard. So I'm going to leave this for at least an hour until I try to move it, but I will probably leave it overnight to fully dry. So that is pretty much it. Salt painting is really easy and I think really fun, especially since you get to kind of see how colors mix and you don't know how the final product is going to end up because the capillary action is when it is drawing, you can see all the food coloring in my hands, is when the salt is kind of absorbing the color and kind of spreading it. So the capillary action makes it so that you don't really necessarily decide where the color goes. You can put your drop somewhere, but that doesn't mean that you get to dictate where the color is going to go. And some colors will start to mix together in kind of unexpected ways. So you end up something really cool, really interesting, really unique. So that is it for me today, but I will see you guys next time on Tween Tuesday. Bye!